Hey everyone, Coach Powers here, and I want to invite you to listen to a very special podcast. But first, I want to put out a little bit of a disclaimer. Now, the topic today is the use of psychedelic mushrooms for mental health. And this is a topic that's been very near and dear to my heart. Psychedelic mushrooms many years ago really helped save my life at one point and pull me out of a very deep, dark depression, and really just gave me a whole new trajectory in my life. Now, for the last 20 years, psychedelic research has been growing, and we see really, really respectable doctors and institutions like Johns Hopkins leading the way today. And the results have been amazing. Johns Hopkins has, for the first time in 50 years, received federal grant and funding to do research. They've now been publishing papers and showing so much promise in treating things like addiction, personality disorder, anxiety, depression, trauma. And I believe coming down the pipeline, we may see benzodiazepine recovery added to the list. I've already had a number of clients using psychedelic mushrooms, microdosing them during and even after their taper, and having amazing success. That said, I want to put out a disclaimer, guys. This video is only for educational purposes. Coach Powers is no way telling you to microdose, to experiment with these things. I just want to bring it to the table. I just want us to have a conversation about it and maybe start looking at this and doing some more deeper research on the topic. Because for so many years, it's been very taboo, and Big Pharma has seemed to be safe, and something like psychedelic mushrooms, ironically, are the dangerous ones, right? Yet the research seems to suggest otherwise. We're seeing a very powerful neuroplasticity effect and an overall boost in mental health and how we treat mental illnesses. So again, I just want to bring this to the table, guys. Coach Powers is not telling you to run out and microdose, but can we open our minds a little bit and maybe explore an alternative path, one that I believe is likely going to be very powerful in the future in the treatment of benzodependence and withdrawal. Without further ado, I welcome my next guest, known as Amanita Dreamer. She runs a big organization pretty much on all things psychedelic mushrooms. She's been very successful, author of a number of books. She has a huge following on YouTube and Instagram. She has her own website. She coaches. She does one-on-one. She's just amazing, and I want you to hear her story and maybe hear some of my story and my experiences with this for the first time.
Grew up in a place where they told you
How
what
long
to
have you been
chase,
doing this?
told you how to run the race.
Probably,
Every move is on the page.
coaching and everything, probably 5 years or so or more, somewhere around there. I did it for years, just like trying to be like a saint or something, like writing everybody and being helpful and fighting the crusade, and then it just became too big. It just became so big. I couldn't keep up with the emails and the comments and all of that, it became like a full-time job essentially. So it was either walk away or just go all in, and so people seem to be very receptive to me. So I just went all in. And now, that's what I do. I run a benzo support recovery coaching program and support group on YouTube. So this is what we're on here. So a lot of my people listening, I'm sure, are going to be really interested in your story. And why I wanted you on here too is because of your background with the psychedelic mushrooms. And there's so much we can get into on that, because for probably 20 years I've been championing this cause. I knew so long ago, even when it was still, and it's still a bit taboo, but when it was really taboo, when it was like, I don't know, like you're being looked at like you were some throwback from the 60s, some Timothy Leary LSD acid head or something. But looking back, I mean, the clues, there was evidence going all the way back to the 60s. I mean, those studies that Leary did with LSD were really successful, like the prison studies and all of that. But it all kind of got buried under this, I don't know, like it just got buried under the 60s, like as if it was some blip on the radar, But anyway, without further ado, I'd love to dive into your story. I saw your videos. I saw your video on Benzo, and I said, oh my God, I got to get her on. This just fits perfectly. So maybe you can kind of give us some background on you and maybe some of your Benzo story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, when you were talking about the mailbox, like I'm sitting over here, just you can breathe through this, you can breathe through this. I also have a mailbox story, but I didn't know. I'm going to give you the end first, and that is that I'm autistic, and of course, went undiagnosed my whole life. So that's why I always had anxiety. Didn't know I had anxiety. Just thought everybody lived like this. I just thought life was hard, but always thought I was born on the wrong planet. Didn't understand why I was weird, why everyone just pushed me out all the time, even though they couldn't tell me why, all that stuff. But when you have a constant undercurrent of anxiety, then when normally difficult things happen, you have nowhere to go but to spill over into panic attacks. Mm-hmm. I had my first panic attack when I was 12. So I was no stranger to panic attacks, but I had gotten good at managing them. I mean, I didn't know what they were for a very long time and thought something was wrong with me. I was just weird. What am I going to do about it? Mm-hmm. Just live with it. I felt ashamed of it. Nobody else seemed to have whatever this was. In college, in my science classes, learned it was, panic attacks or whatever. Like, well, I've dealt with it this long. I'll keep dealing with it. But having kids really upped the ante on all of that, because now there's not just me to worry about. Now there's another mouth to feed, and then partners leaving and trying to date, trying to support, as a single mom, all the stress that's involved in that. And worked really hard to buy my first home by myself for me and my daughter. And it seemed like everything that I tried to do that was a normal next step in life just ramped the anxiety up that much higher. You're supposed to get married again. You're supposed to add to your family and have another kid, and then when that didn't work out, you're supposed to keep working. And I started buying houses and flipping them and learning how to do the work myself, and then Hurricane Katrina hit and I lost everything. I lost all my investments. I had to relocate to the Atlanta area. I had met my husband about that time. We relocated together, and I had to move $45,000 in debt and started living off credit cards. And it just got so stressful trying to make ends meet and going to food banks and skipping meals myself and raising poor children with 8 years of college, 2 degrees, 4 minors, plenty of intelligence and ability, and I can barely make ends meet. No matter what we do, it won't work, because I get ahead and then like natural disasters or a failing marriage resets my life. And I really was just, I didn't know what to do. We were just always days away from being homeless. And I just started having panic attacks that didn't end. And I remember at one point I was told by a doctor, panic attacks don't last any more than, 20 or 30 minutes. What is that bullshit? Here I am on day 6 mm-hmm. of a panic attack and not sleeping and can barely breathe, not eating, in the corner, just shaking and crying. And I can't move. I can't raise my children. I can't do anything. And my husband's like, that's it. He put me in the car and drove me to a psychiatrist. And they put me on Klonopin because it had a really long half-life. And anyone was a candidate for it, was me. I was just a worst case scenario. And all those years of untreated anxiety and panic attacks brought me there. And I was relieved. I was tired. I slept all the time. Couldn't think. Felt like I was moving through mud. But it's the first time that I wasn't living with panic and anxiety all the time. And then I learned to fight through it, to get functional again. And then I caught my stride, and I'm on the highest dose of this longest half-life benzodiazepine, but I was functional again. I would say it took me 6 months to get good again. And I was good. And for 5 years, I was good. But around year 4, it started that wait a minute, how come I don't remember where I parked yet again? And then just one thing after another, I couldn't remember. I had to use more lists. I had to start using more notes and post-it notes and calendars, and always showing up at the right time on the wrong day for appointments, and missing things for my children, and forgetting their presents for a birthday party. And the things just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was getting really scary. And at one point, I'm like, God, something is wrong. This is just, I'm too young for this. This is not normal. People don't do this. And it was really concerning me, I think, when I heard my kids say, well, it's not like mom's going to remember, or, well, mom wouldn't get it. I don't know, man. Mom will probably burn the house down. And to have children that used to respect me start talking about me like that, I was like, that's not right. They're too young and I'm too young for me to become a burden. And it was around that same time that I saw the reports that benzodiazepines can cause early onset dementia. So I went back to my psychiatrist and I was like, dude, I can't do that. I'm getting that. So they started loading me up on all these support drugs and like tricyclic antidepressants, because I'd done the rounds of like SSRIs. So they put me on old school tricyclic, got, all the jolts of electricity and restless legs at night and like racing thoughts and all this insanity. So I started coming down off everything. I really started coming down. And of course, that started the same hell that you started. And then I found Ashton after like my first attempt of trying to come down the way the doctor said, which was over like 3 weeks after being on benzos for 5 years. And I'm going to come off in 3 weeks. And, the hell that everyone who's listening has already been through on that shit. So I was like, I'm not going to listen to him. And that's when I found Ashton and I found the support groups. And I started reading about the methods and the percentages and how often I've got a calendar out, and I did just like you. I'm like, this is a 2-year plan. What the? Okay. Yeah. So then I just decided I'll speed it up as much as I can. I'll live with some edginess and some anxiety or whatever, but still every drop took longer to acclimate to, until I was up to like 9-10 weeks per drop trying to level. And that trying to level is being barely functional. And with every drop, instead of being able to drive to the grocery store and force my way through it and get in the car and drive home as fast as I could because of the panic, then it was, okay, I can't drive. I got to take an Uber. And then it was abandoning my cart in the middle of the grocery store. And then it was ordering the groceries. And then it was not being able to bring them in. And then it was just not even being able to leave my room. Like it just, and I've heard people say, this is the drug that wants you to die. And it takes your zest for life and turns it into the terror of the world. And the only thing that's safe is like your own body, but even your own body is betraying you constantly. So there's no safety. I did this for 5 years, trying to get off and getting as low as I could until the pain and the muscle spasms and the insanity in my head and the intrusive thoughts and the paranoia and the agoraphobia and the panic attacks and the not sleeping and the not being able to eat and the constant shaking and I would like go back up one bump, just one step back up, and I would level out and feel relief for about an hour. And then I would just go right back to where I was. And then something would happen in my marriage, in my life, with an ex, with the kids. And then I would be right back on my full dose again. So 5 more years, 10 years total. And if you can't live on them and you can't get off of them, that's not living. And I wasn't going to wind up in some home being taken care of when my kids aren't even old enough to leave home yet. Like that's that you don't go out like that. That's not normal. People don't do that.
Right.
And I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. And I had done everything over the years. I'd had 8 years of therapy. When I was in my early 20s, I'd done EMDR. I had done tapping. I'd done hypnotherapy, acupressure, acupuncture. Of course, there's all those people that are like, have you tried meditation? Really, motherfucker? That's
Have
it?
you tried breathing?
Oh, you should take a breathing class. So I got hopeless, and I didn't want to live anymore, and I planned it out, so that only a professional would find my body. I wrote a note to the professional that would find my body of apology that they had to find my body or deal with it. And I got the attorney, I got everything, all my affairs in order, everything. And I knew how I was going to do it. I did all the research. I used a VPN. I would go to public computers to research it so it couldn't get traced back to me or no one would find it. Like when you want to go, nobody's going to know. So I really needed to leave. And I had it all ready to go. And I felt so much peace knowing that I wasn't going to suffer anymore. And I felt so much guilt knowing what I was going to leave behind for my children and the rest of my family. And so that the notes that I wrote them were so gut wrenching and awful that these would be the last words I would ever say to my children, that they would hang on to it for the rest of their lives, that everybody would still blame themselves, even though I tried to explain how there was literally nothing anybody could have done. It was awful. And the day before I was going to be leaving, I was sitting on my back deck and I heard a voice say, if you're going to leave the earth, you should go take a walk out on the earth you're leaving. And I couldn't say no. It was compulsive. Like I immediately got up and went down the steps and went walking out in the woods, found this bright mushroom, and I'm like, the fuck is that? Picked it, brought it home, deadly, dangerous, toxic, poisonous. And I was like, well, at least it's pretty. But then like there's all that stuff, that started coming up about the iconography of it, how far back it goes in Earth's history, human history, the art and the statues and the stones and all of it. It's in the Rig Veda potentially and all of it. And I'm like, you know what though? That's not how we treat deadly substances. That's how we treat substances that save lives.
Right.
That are important to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking at the pharmacology and biochemistry. And when I saw it was a GABA agonist, I was like, that's why it's treated that way. Mm-hmm. That's why. And so I made it. I went out and I got more because I learned that it fruits like gregariously within a certain period of time. So I got out and went and got more of them in case I was going to use it and it was going to become my medicine. I wanted to go get as many as I could. And I brought them home and I dried them and I learned how I experimented with how to make it, didn't know how much to take, couldn't find anything online. There was literally nothing about this mushroom except on all the trip forums and stories of bad trips and all this outlandish, insane ways that you're supposed to prepare it and shit you're supposed to do. And I just did the really simple thing of just extracting it with water and adding lemon. And I would take it a little at a time and a little at a time, just my heart pounding, thinking it's going to fucking kill me. And it's going to be a long, miserable death if it does, or it's going to save me. And I just kept sipping it and sipping it and sipping it and sipping it and not feeling anything. So then I just said, fuck it. And I just took a whole bunch of it and tripped my ass off. And it was a long night. I have yet to talk about it. I haven't told anybody I have a trip story about it, like the beginning of it, but the depths of it and what went on in the deepest, darkest of it, I don't really talk about. But I woke up the next morning and I sat up and I had it. whatever that word is that is the opposite of suicidal. I woke up feeling huge and big and powerful and capable and full of life and strong. And I had no anxiety, no pain, no side effects. I felt human. I felt abundantly loved. I felt happy and excited. And I'm like, fucking, I got shit to do. And then immediately tears. Like I just fell to the ground and cried because I realized everything in that moment. My life was saved, the potentials of what I was going to go do in the world, that other people needed to know about it, that I lived my entire life like that needlessly, that these benzos were killing people and this was the answer and it's everywhere. Right. Like all of it. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and just walked around stunned and shocked and stunned for days. And days turned into weeks, turned into months. And I developed like this microdosing protocol. I tested it, went off of it, tested it, went off of it, and experimented until I found what I felt like worked. I started trying to talk about it online. I got immediately banned from every group that I was in trying to talk about it. I tried to mention it on the forums and I got kicked out of forums. I got reported and everywhere that I went because I'm talking about something deadly or toxic or dangerous. And I'm like, well, fuck y'all then. Right. Whatever. And the mushrooms were like, well, you need to start a YouTube channel. And by this time, 2 or 3 months, I'm in regular dialogue with these entities. Mm-hmm. And I'd never questioned it, that I'm having this dialogue with mushrooms on a regular basis. Right. And so I'm not going to do that. Like there's a reason one doesn't exist. There's a reason literally nobody is talking about this on the internet. And whatever that reason is, I don't want to find out. After 9 months, they were so relentless. I was like, fine. Like I said it out loud, fine. So I got a tripod and I made the video on how to prepare it. If anybody cared, if anybody wanted to know, because there was all these, Facebook groups of people talking about how to prepare it and how to make a tea with it. And they're all for the purposes of tripping. Well, if they're going to trip, like maybe they'll find the mushroom that way, whatever. So I made this video and then I made another one about using lemon and then I left it and I walked away. And 3 months later, I came back over 600 subs, tons of questions. And I just immediately started making videos, answering questions. It was a year and a half, just like you said, before I would. No, it was for my year anniversary of the channel before I would upload my trip report because I couldn't go back and talk about it. It took a year from starting the channel, which was 9 months after getting off the benzos, because I never took another one again and I never had a side effect again. This became my medicine. And it turns out this medicine is healing. Like it's fixing what was broken. So you need less. And so the protocol that I sort of created for myself, you use less and less and less. And now that I'm 4.5, 5 years into taking it, I don't need it that much. I use it when I know something stressful is coming or it's been a while and I just miss talking to the mushrooms and I want to trip on it and redevelop like that mushroom voice, or I'm just getting burned out and they like heal burnout or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it took a long, long time. And in all of that withdrawal, I would go through that same trying to just check the fucking mail. And I would be so tired, I would have to lay down and rest just from the overwhelm and exhaustion and the panic and the anxiety and the voices. And I thought I'll never be normal again. And like now here I am filming a documentary, writing 3 books, flying all over the world, running to catch flights from one gate to another when they're late, and like doing podcasts and all 33,000, I guess, subs on my YouTube channel and 10,000 now on Instagram. And like, what the hell? Right. Crazy. It's crazy. And now I want people to know. And when I saw you hit me up on Facebook, you're like, yo, and I saw what you were doing. I was like, yeah. And our schedules, we couldn't get together, and I'm like harassing you to do this.
Yeah.
These are the people I originally did this for, you know.
Right. So that's an amazing story, and I've got something that's so similar that I'll dive into in a second. But so when you took that first trip, that was you were still on the benzo, or you had come off, or where does that fit in the timeline of all that?
I had gotten down to the point where I was having to like put it in water to start titrating my dose, and it was like down to like a half of one, and I had just bumped back up because I knew I was going to leave the planet, so I didn't want to go through that anymore. So I went back up to my full dose just so I could plan everything.
Right.
And then when I realized what I had found and knew I was going to be trying to take it, I immediately started dropping again and dealing with all that for about 2 weeks that I was researching the mushroom. So I was on like half my regular dose.
And so you were microdosing or tripping, taking the mushroom throughout that last part of the taper then?
No, when I was researching the mushroom, I went back up to my full dose. When I saw I was likely going to take the mushroom, I pulled back to half my dose. And that's where I stayed until the day that I decided to take it. But this is I'm not telling anyone to do this, because not only is there no like information about how to do this at all, anywhere at all. There are no oral ingestion studies about this mushroom and its efficacy. And Psych Wellness, they've done some clinical trials for getting it clinically just recognized as safe by the FDA, but that's like the full muscimol. And I'm talking about only like a 50% conversion. It's ibotenic acid in its natural state, and it converts to muscimol. And most people use muscimol to trip on, which is dangerous in my opinion. It's the middle that counts, because then you've got that balance between the two sides of the mushroom that's actually necessary for healing. So those of you that are listening, don't come bother me about how to do this, because I'm not going to tell you, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to practice medicine without a license. Right. Number two, if you've been on benzos long enough, you know how to taper off of them. Right. You know what your body is doing with your tricyclics or with your SNRIs or with your benzos. You've got a relationship there, and you've learned how to listen to your body. This is a very listen to your body kind of thing. And for legal reasons, I'm going to say talk to your doctor about it, but I can promise you your doctor's never heard of it. So they're going to say, don't do that. Right. So I don't know what to tell you other than I can't know this and not tell people this.
I totally hear you. And that's actually why I decided to talk to you. You're the perfect person. And like you, this has been my dark little secret for 20 years probably now, And so first off, before I get into anything deeper, I want to piggyback off what you're saying. And indeed, because a lot of my clients are my followers and fans of my channel, are going through benzos, they're going to be desperate. And I don't want any of them to go, oh, Coach Powers is saying I should try mushrooms. We're not saying that. I think if anything, I mean, first off, we're just sharing we're sharing our experiences with this. But like you said, there's not any research about tapering and doing the mushroom at the same time.
The doctors don't even know how to get you off benzos.
Right. And I'm not saying that mushrooms couldn't be an amazing thing. I mean, they very well could end up being this part that, in 5 or 10 years from now, it may be common to use microdosing to come off benzos. I don't know. So I just want to be sure, like you, I'm not advocating and telling anyone to go microdose mushrooms while they're coming off their benzos. God forbid.
Well, and also, though, make the distinction that I am talking about the Amanita muscaria mushroom, which is a GABA agonist, glutamate, cholinergic. It hits all three, which makes it incredibly complex, good and powerful,
Right.
as opposed to psilocybin, which is what most people think of when they think of mushrooms,
Right. Right.
which is hits your, well, we know it hits your serotonin receptors, but we don't know what else. They think that there's more. I also believe that this one is bumping dopamine,
Right.
which would make sense because, you know, dopamine is the do that more
Uh-huh.
neurotransmitter. And
Right.
and when you do this, everybody wants to obsess on it and talk about it and draw it and think about it all the time.
Right.
So
Right.
it would make sense that but it also helps you. Okay, I'm not a doctor. In my experience, it got me off nicotine. It helps when I crave sugar and other dopaminergic types of addictions. And a lot of people are using it now for alcohol.
Right.
So I will smoke it in the afternoon when those, you know, kinds of hit, those cravings start to hit. So yeah, you can do your own research about it, but nobody on the planet right now, as of March of 2023, is going to know how to tell you how to get off of your benzodiazepines using this substance. That's just not going to be a thing you're going to find anywhere. But I have a community that I created for this purpose so that it can be peer-to-peer of other people. And that's mushroomvoice.com. And we have meetings all week, all through the week, all month long. And we talk about this stuff. Right. And that way it's sort of like the Ashton thing where they have all those groups where everybody just sort of helps each other, because you can't and I can't advise anybody like that.
Right, right. And that's why I want to be clear on that. I'm not telling anyone to do that, but what I just want to introduce this to the conversation with the audience to say, hey, and to be fair, now, you know, I have a lot of clients that ask me about this, and I'm always transparent with them. And I say, look, it helped me, not during this time, but it helped me in my life. I said, but I've had a number of clients that microdose Amanita, for example, and did very, very well. Take that for what you will. Again, I'm not saying to do it, but I actually am reaching out to Dr. Roland Griffith at Johns Hopkins. He's leading a lot of research on psychedelics right now, and you know, finding they treat major depression, addiction, personality, like all kinds of stuff. Would love to have a conversation with this guy. I think they're in the future that this is going to be, you know, this is going to be something that's going to be big for benzodiazepines. I feel that, but again, I'm not advocating it. Okay, so that disclaimer aside, I want to share, if you don't mind, my experience. So, and I want to back up too, because you know, I told you, I gave you this sort of hyper condensed version of my benzo story, but also after I told you that, I was thinking I kind of made it sound one sided, like oh, I had a muscle injury, and then I got on this thing, you know, this benzo. But truth be told, I had come from like a lot of trauma in my childhood, you know, a very abusive father, broken home, drugs, alcohol, you know, domestic violence. When I was a teenager, someone tried to murder me in a vehicle and almost succeeded. It was on life support. I mean, I had a series of trauma throughout my childhood growing up. And so I was already predisposed, you know, for anxiety, panic, PTSD, a lot of things that I think at early 20s I wasn't quite aware of. You know, you really don't know what you're looking at. I dropped out of school. I had a GED, I think at the time, maybe not even that, and was basically just, I was becoming a statistic of what you read about when people that are that young go to all that trauma, you know, drinking and drugs and just, you know, just reckless living and stuff. And so what happened was I had a series of really, really bad events, and eventually I just tapped out. You know, I said, I'm done, you know, and I got really depressed. And I don't know if I was completely suicidal, but I was really entertaining the idea, you know. And I went down to a friend's house that was an old band member of mine and really close friend, like a brother. And I was kind of in my mind saying goodbye to him, but not telling him, you know, but I just wanted to spend time with him. And like you said, you know, at total peace. It's always strange, people worry about suicide. The thing about suicide is when you really get close to it, you oftentimes enter into a peaceful state because you have an escape. You're getting out, you feel like you're getting out. And so I was in this very zen mode already, and I just didn't care. And I remember I went down and I visited him, and he said, "Hey, come with me. I want you to, want to do something." And we pulled up to a cow pasture in the dark, middle of nowhere. Hop the fence. I'm like, what the hell are we doing, man? Starts picking mushrooms. I'm like, this is crazy. We're gonna get shot. And every resistance I had just sort of went, eh, what the hell I have to lose? Like,
If
whatever.
they shoot me, they did me a favor.
Yeah, it's like whatever. Grab these mushrooms. I'm not even I'm just like on autopilot in this weird
Mhm.
zen state. We get these mushrooms, come home though. My friend is a light specialist. He went to school at Full Sail to do light programming. So he traveled around the world with bands, big bands, and light shows for all kinds of stuff. So anyway, he goes, "Hey, why don't you go take it easy for a little bit?" He said, "I'm gonna whip this up." And I don't know why I wasn't still thinking that we were gonna do them or anything. I was just sort of just in a weird state of mind. So I went in there and I took a bath and I laid down in this dark room, a spare bedroom, and I took a nap for an hour, and which is rare for me. But I was in such a peaceful state. And I woke up and I came out and he had this beautiful music playing. It was this enchanting music. And he had all these psychedelic lights in the ceiling. They were like purples and oranges. And I mean, he knew how to make a light show like nobody. Like this was like something out of a Tim Burton movie. And I remember he had this big chair and he wrapped it with like 100 yards or feet or something of white lights. And the chair just glue. It looked like God's throne, this big thing. And he has these 2 cups of tea. He says, "Here." And again, I don't even think. I go, whatever, I have nothing left to lose, and I drank this tea. Now I'm early 20s. This is well before benzos and everything. And I drank this tea and we're listening to this beautiful, enchanting music. I think it was the Pixies, Wake the Dead was the song. Pixies, Wake the Dead. I remember that song. We played it over and over again. So beautiful, enchanting, almost Celtic like. And the next thing I know, I was laying there on the floor and mind blown open. And suddenly I saw 2 of me. And one was Dave, that was this broken home, just pitiful, damaged, traumatized, little, didn't think he was anything, fearful. It was like my shadow. It was everything that I was negative of me and everything that was fearful, everything I couldn't stand to live with. And then there was suddenly this other side of me. And it was like there was a schism that had happened. And this other side was like perfect. It was like reconnecting. It was deja vu. It was like I was reconnecting to this essence I had always known but forgotten. It was like my inner child. And it was like, oh my God, I've come home. Right. It's you probably get
It
what I'm
feels
saying.
like home there. Yes.
It's home, right? And you go,
Yes.
oh my God, I'm home. And I could just see the schism. I was like, what the hell was I holding on to over here? What was
Mm-hmm.
this? And this other side was connected to everything. It was powerful. It was beautiful. It was part of, dare I say, God or God-like. It was like I was interconnected to everything. But it wasn't a high. And that's the other thing I was taken by. It wasn't like, when you hear stories about tripping, it wasn't like I was out of my mind seeing pink elephants and all this nonsense. I was very, very much in control of everything. I just felt reconnected at the highest level to who I actually was. And it was such a distinct difference that I could look at that other side of me that I couldn't stand living with. And it just washed away. And I thought, you start laughing. You go, I got the joke finally. There's been a trick that's been played on me for the last 10, 15 years, And I remember I had this journal and I wrote down, I could see the beauty in death. I could literally see the beauty. I wasn't wanting to die, wasn't in any hurry to die, but I didn't fear it anymore. And I started
That's
writing
why they
down,
give it to people that are terminal, that are freaking
right,
out and scared.
there's something,
You don't,
yeah,
you're not afraid anymore, but also you totally get why you're here. So you don't want to,
yes,
you're like, oh my God, I've got so much to do.
yes, you have so
But
much
if
to
you've
do.
ever been suicidal,
Mm-hmm.
you're in a club that I don't hear people talk about, and that is that once you've planned your death, once you know you're leaving and you get that sense of peace, even when you come out of it and you want to live, no matter how you get out of it and want to live, you're never the same again
Right.
once you've embraced death
Right. That's
as
a
a
good
good
point.
thing.
It
You live
is.
differently after that. Mushrooms or not, you live very differently after that.
It's like the old Zen saying, die before you die, so you can realize there's no death.
Yeah.
Right. That's, I mean, and they weren't taking psychedelics necessarily. I mean, Zen meditation can reach, and through yoga you can reach high psychedelic states. I'll actually come back to that in a minute. But so anyway, I like you, the next day I was reborn, and almost overnight I was like floating. And over the next few weeks, my mind, it felt like that movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper. Like I had a brain transplant or something. My depression went away. I mean, almost overnight, depression gone, anxiety gone, panic gone, insignificant insecurity, fearful little Dave gone. And it wasn't like an ego was born. It was the annihilation of ego. And what I was left with was just this being, this core, and it was this sense of playfulness and a mission. And I was like, oh my God, I'm at Disney World and I want to ride all the rides and I want to see all the sights. All this time I've been so afraid. It's like walking into Disney World and never leaving the entrance because you're just so terrified. And
I
suddenly I
tell
went,
people all the time, it's like we won the hottest ticket in the universe to planet
right.
Earth, and we're here, man.
Yes.
We're on the ride. Like,
For 100%.
got
I
a
can't,
lot to do.
yes, I came back and I immediately I got enrolled into college. I quit smoking cigarettes. I quit drinking and drugs and everything I was doing. Uh, I was learning so much. I started absorbing psychology, philosophy. I mean, it was it's just an incredible period of like hyper learning that I went through over the next few months. And then I just started learning how to meditate. I practiced Zen, and I would just sit out in nature, and I would watch the tree sway, and I would just empty my mind, and I would just sustain presence over and over, presence without judgment and openness. And I think that was the thing I was missing. I didn't have an ability to open. I think all my trauma left me guarding. I was bracing so much that I couldn't allow anything in. And I often say, like, the meditative mindset to me is the natural state of what we're supposed to be, right? And it's our ego and our incessant thoughts that disconnect us from this true source, this frequency that feeds you, right? And so I was tapping back into that, and everything was changing in my life. I mean, I would go to work and I would just, it was like you were floating. Everything you did, you caught all the green lights. If something fell, you effortlessly caught it. You just felt like you were in the matrix. And
My
people,
word for it is flow. I
right,
live in flow now.
great way of putting it. You're in complete flow state. People were coming up to me going, what are you on, drugs? I go, no, I'm actually not on drugs. I'm on nothing. And I was just, and so I meditated, and I went back to the psychedelics, and I kept exploring, and I was, now I was getting into a community in a sense, this very small, rare community of people. And I was finding other brilliant artists and people that like-minded. You start to gravitate toward each other. It's like you find each other in a weird way.
Because
And
you're
so,
not fit for society anymore after that.
right, probably so. Yeah, everything's a bit different. But
Oh
I
God.
just kept meditating. And then I remember one night, I had taken some mushrooms, and I was in a beautiful place, and like I was realizing, I just started to call it church. I just called it church. I go, I want to go to church. I'm going to spend time with God. And I would just lay in this abyss with God, and I would see rainbows and lights, and it was just in this beautiful state. And eventually this mushroom, like you said, it sort of talks to you, right? And you start to have this dialogue, and it said, the goal is to sort of see if you can make a life that fosters this without needing to so heavily rely on it. Like, I wanted to bring it back. I wanted to remember, but the really sacred parts of it. But of course, after enough time, it's almost like you're not meant to stay there. Like, I'm talking about far out places where you get to places where you start to see almost like language of angels or something. You're starting to see like some really like the DMT elves or something. Like you're getting into this place that you start to go, maybe we're not supposed to stay here. Maybe there's this like a threshold we're punching through or something here. but I kept wanting to stay there. And so anyway, my journey then became, can I sort of use the mushroom as like you would go to church to realign, and could I use the meditation to sort of help anchor me there and all the other time? And so I started eventually phasing out the mushroom less, more and more, and was just leaning on the meditation. But the mushroom had already opened a doorway that you couldn't shut. It was there, it opened a portal in me, and changed my whole life. Went to college. I mean, I became my art career blew up. My whole life changed, like a lot of what you were saying, and I had this new purpose. And it wasn't until the car accident by chance that I ended up on that damn benzo, and the benzos just stole it from me. It stole it from me. It took all that away from me. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
go completely back asleep or anything. I was still aware, but I could feel the changes. Like this thing had put a blanket over my brain or something.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
so
the opposite of life, drug. It kills your
mhm,
beingness, the
right,
thing that makes you alive and your motivation to be and exist and learn how to walk and learn how to eat and then learn how to
right,
run and then wants you to get out and make friends and then wants you to have sex and then it wants you to go out and conquer the world and then it wants you to get married and procreate. Like that drive that makes you want to be human, this drug that kills it.
right.
And then the Amanita muscaria mushroom gives it back
Hmm.
tenfold. It's the go out and live your life
Right,
mushroom. It's the cell, it's the mushroom of the ego and the mushroom of the self. And it wants you to have your ego to live this life through.
right.
It wants you to identify with yourself and your separateness and have a good sense of separateness and sense of self in a
Right,
very healthy way.
right,
Then the psilocybins are the ones that deal with, but we're also all connected. And then it
right,
shows you that everything is sentient,
right,
teaches you how to start talking to trees until they're your family too, and all the animals and, all the living things and all of the humans. And then, you take high enough doses of psilocybin to get off the planet and break through to the void and then
hmm,
go hear the language, of the universe and the
right,
music and see the construct and watch it being built and learn that you are a creator of the universe. And when you
right,
get those higher level visions of how it's put together, and then this mushroom, when you come home, says, and that's okay that you're here because you're freaking amazing. Like
right.
you got the bestest, coolest little ride going on here. So like, what are we gonna do with it?
Yeah,
So it's a beautiful, if you need to deal with yourself, which panic, anxiety, trauma, all that stuff, that's got to be dealt with in the self.
right,
That's this one. And then when you want to deal with how that affects other people, so the people who cause the trauma, then the psilocybin helps work on the relationships with
right,
others and how you see yourself in relation to other people.
right,
So I
right.
use them both in tandem.
Hmm.
I'll use this one and then work on that same issue then with the psilocybin, and they'll educate me about that interaction, its karma, anything I want to do going forward, and what that relationship could look like, and then
Right,
whatever, and collapsing timelines. And then I take that information and I put it back in here, and when I'm having a rough time coming down from a trip, this mushroom helps you come down because it's a GABA agonist. If you're ever on an LSD mushroom, any kind of trip, that's got tryptamines in it, they'll give you a benzo to kill the trip. So I've started experimenting with this and it'll absolutely kill a trip. So it's good
interesting.
to have on hand if you're doing psilocybin or doing something like
Right,
that and you're kind of worried about, having a bad trip and wanting to get out of it or whatever. If you've got this, you can do that. There, it's beautiful that they are best friends,
hmm,
the Amanita and the psilocybes,
right,
and they all work together and they're here
right,
doing their thing together. And we're not supposed to just be like using only one or only the other. And I think this one really does. Amanita really bridges that gap between the out there escaping the body, leaving the ego and having ego death, and what you learn out there and the beauty in it, to coming down and going, fuck, it's so hard here though.
Right.
And then this one goes, no, 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 you forgot about me. And then you dose that again, you get back on a microdosing regimen, and then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot how beautiful it is to be in this meat sack. This is a great ride. And it helps balance that experience of how amazing and beautiful it was to leave. And then when you've been here a while and you've been working on yourself and you start to get a little, full of yourself and start to get a little testy about things and maybe a little bit too big. And when I start feeling like territorial of my space and my things, I'm like, okay, that's not so good. And then I know it's time to revisit the psilocybes. Or if I'm having relationships that are not working again, or they're off balance, or I've got new shit surfacing, then I go back to the psilocybes, and they give me that bigger picture.
Right.
Again. And so it's just this balance.
Sure.
To me.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. And like what you said too with the psilocybin, it's the sense of interconnectedness. And that was, and it was interesting because I was raised Catholic, hard, staunch Catholic. And when someone tried to kill me and it shattered my faith, and I think because I was raised with this idea that God was sort of this protector, like a father. And if you prayed right and you did the right things, he'd look out for you and he'd protect you. And, I was raised with this sort of idea. So when all that got shattered and someone had literally tried to kill me, and I was a kid, and I just remember being so angry and so lost because that's all I knew, that I became an atheist for a period of time, really angry, one of those really angry atheists. And it was through Zen and the psilocybin experiences that it is like, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This was different, And so I often joke and say, people say, do you believe in God? And I say, I don't think I have a belief anymore. I don't have a belief. It's something like a knowing or a relationship. I know it sounds crazy, and I wouldn't argue with anybody. It's just my personal thing, but it's like, it's just this, it's knowing. It's like asking me how do you know you like to do art or something? It's like, I just know it. I can't prove it, but I know it in my heart, And yeah, I felt connected to everything. And I think it was that it allowed me to forgive. It allowed me to remove so much anger, because how do you hate anybody once you realize you're all one?
Dude, and that's the biggest thing, is be careful what you ask for. Like literally the things that you intend and the things that you go there hoping and dreaming and begging for, you get tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize you can do that all the time. And then like you really understand what it means to like have intentions and manifest and thoughts become things, and how powerful you are. But when you don't hate anymore, and you're not angry anymore, and you don't blame anybody anymore, and all you can see is their divinity too, then it's a whole other work to learn how to walk away from toxic people, knowing you could help them, but that all the love in the world can't make them want to help themselves.
Good point.
And you then have to learn how to turn around and redevelop your ego, redevelop your boundaries.
Right.
And you get harder and harsher to other people looking at you. You look like an asshole now. But you're not. You're just, there's a resolve there of knowing, I love you. I can't help you. You've got to walk this road. But also, I finally love me enough to know you can't tread here anymore. And it's this resolve that it's not in your mind. It's in your beingness.
Right.
It's a state. And then you look like a dick. What are you going to tell people? Like, well, that's what, psychedelics do, I don't want any part of that. And it's like, but you can, and sometimes you can even do it with all the love in the world, but the fact that they're looking at your back as you walk away, doesn't matter how much you love them, but you know that you do. And all these people you're walking away from, that don't get it, that don't understand, that are hurting you, that have been hurting you, you can't do it anymore. You can't take part in those toxic systems. You can't be in this job anymore. You can't be in this friendship anymore. You can't be in this relationship anymore. Can't be in that family dynamic anymore. Like it affects so many parts of your life that when you start to walk away, it's so gut wrenching to love people that much more than you ever have before and walk away knowing they hate you for it.
Right. Right. Well, you really nailed it. Absolutely. It's true. Sort of watch what you wish for, right? Because there is this sort of catharsis period or this transformation that happens where exactly all the old systems, all the old trips that you had been entertaining start to just sort of disappear. And what you're left with is sort of the actual real current, the real, what's real, what you really want to do, the people you really want to be around, the people that get you and what you want to do. And suddenly it doesn't matter if you had this get rich scheme or this narcissistic codependent relationship or whatever it is. It's suddenly the trips all go away. And I think Timothy Leary called them reality tunnels. Timothy Leary, I was a big fan of Leary, and I think he's so misunderstood. And I think was probably still 10 or 20 years from revisiting him and really giving him the credit that he deserved. Like, sure, did people get carried away and get put on Mars with some of the psychedelics and the LSD and all that? I think so. I think there was, and maybe you had this experience too, where I had, once you had that experience, I wanted to go on to the top of a mountain and shout it. Like, oh my God, there's this amazing experience and you don't have to be afraid of death anymore. You don't have to be, and then, but then I saw friends and people I knew that were tripping and they weren't doing it like me. They weren't having that experience. They would drink alcohol and trip and go play putt golf or something stupid. And I'm like, you do play putt golf? Why would you want to?
But it's an intention drug, and we don't know what these drugs are because we're used to alcohol, benzos, pharmaceuticals that are dead. They're not living things,
right?
And they're not connected to the DNA of the universe the way that these other things are. And we don't understand that about living medicine, especially tryptamines, and then mushrooms and stuff like this. They are made of the holographic universe of that construct that we're made of, and you take them and they pull you out into it. It's a conversation that goes two ways, and if you intend to trip and party, that's all you'll get. It'll be a hell of a party. But if you intend to heal trauma, that's what you will get. If you intend ego death and you take enough for them to do their job to get you there, you will go, oh my God, I get it. Whatever you intend, you work with it. And while you're on the trip, if you want to steer it, you steer it. All you got to do is think about what you want to do. And that's where you go. And that's what they'll heal. You can fix your gut and you can heal your immune system, or you can fix your mind, or you can fix, a core trauma wound, or you can repair a relationship, like whatever it is, set yourself up for, the packets to unfold to get you to the book you want to write. It doesn't matter what you want to do. You'll get that. So I want people to know you don't take it and go, well, shit, I hope I get what I need. I hope I don't just party. I don't want to be the party person. I want healing. It's a very active participation.
100%. Intention is everything.
Absolutely.
And that's what I had realized. I said, oh, no. I was taking this to heal, and I was taking this to explore consciousness and to get closer to God or something, the universe, and to find my purpose and all of that. And some of my friends, I think they just thought it was like bourbon or something. It's like, let's trip.
If that's what you want it to be.
And then exactly. Right. Yeah. And people, the people that got it started gravitating toward me, and it was so strange because I know, like I said, I really hesitated having this conversation on my channel just for the fact of I know how taboo this might sound to a lot of people. And at the same time, I consider myself a truth teller. And I thought people respect me and I've never steered them wrong. And again, I'm not telling anyone to go do any of this, but I just thought this is the future, and this is important. And when you got Johns Hopkins University and some of the leading scientists on the planet now, and for some time, doing research and things, and this is coming down the pipeline. Microdosing now is actually becoming kind of mainstream, right? And I just thought it's kind of time to maybe be less afraid and share this other part of me, this other story, and just open this narrative, right? So I really appreciate you, sharing not only your benzo story, which you were very open about, but also, you know, uh, all your information on the psychedelics as well.
Well, if you want to get information about the Amanita muscaria mushroom, it's amanitadreamer.net, because YouTube and their censorship, is really, really bad. I have very few videos monetized, and I just had to move them all over, and I pay the bandwidth to host all of my videos there. Anything you want to learn about taking Amanita and harvesting them, anything, it's all free. You don't have to give me your email. You don't have to do anything. Just go freaking watch it and use it and get what you need and help yourself.
Right. And that was another reason why I wanted to do this, because I had already so many clients that were doing it anyway. And I never have told anyone to do it. I never advocated anything, but they were already doing it. And I said, man, this is really catching on more and more. I mean, dozens and dozens of my clients were microdosing, not having full trips. I really would hesitate to advise any of that, but a very small microdose. And now we're seeing this neuroplasticity effect that it's having on the brain. I mean, it's literally growing new receptors and repairing receptors and activating dormant parts of the brain that you just can't do. I mean, it's literally adding thousands and thousands of new neurons to the limbic system. I mean, it's rather impressive just on a physiological level, right? And you and I have been talking so much about like the epiphany and the spiritual and the interconnectedness and all of that. But just on the physiological side, which is where science is first going to go, they're not going to touch. I mean, even if you look at something like Zen, I've had so many spiritual, profound, life-changing moments just in deep meditation. But in all my work in clinical psychology, they don't talk about that. They've divorced the spirit from the practice, which to me is like throwing the baby out with the bathwater in a sense, right? And they say, no, we call it mindfulness, and it's not about spirit, it's about. Okay, that's what we teach, I guess. So, sure. But I mean, to me, it's like getting to the university and camping out on the steps and never fully entering into the university. It's like, sure, mindfulness basically will help you, but open yourself to something spiritual and watch what will happen. If you can really open yourself to that, right?
Well, the Amanita muscaria, the very first thing it said is, we're going to teach you where your anxiety came from.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to help you heal it. And then I learned it came from everything that was not physical in this physical world, but came from all this other stuff that it immediately started fixing in me and changing in me, which then brought me back to the toxicity of this world and how people behave and treat each other.
Mm-hmm.
That was never my problem or my fault. But I learned to then go on and treat myself that way and tolerate things that were feeding the anxiety even more. And it just goes back, it feeds back. It's the food that you eat, and it's your gut biome, and it's your relationships, and it's toxicity, and it's spiritual connectedness. And it's putting your feet on the ground. Like, it's literally everything.
Right.
And you can't separate it. You can't separate it.
And it's false ego. I think that was the big one for me, was this idea that I had accumulated this identity that was false, and it was handed down to me. It's the expectations your parents gave you and society gave you and your friends and your brothers and your sisters. And people just keep telling you who you are until you end up in your 20s and you're ready to have a 30s or 40s and you're ready to have a psychotic break. Because you've been living a lie, in a sense. You've been living you've been living for everybody else, and everybody else is living for everybody else. And you realize everybody's caught up in this illusion, and then when you do have a moment like this, it's so funny that we have to feel at all taboo about it. Because it's like,
I don't anymore. Yeah. I mean, I guess people who don't want to hear me talk about this mushroom, good for you. It must be nice to not be desperate and suicidal.
Right.
Okay, good. You go take your benzos if they're working for you, or don't have panic attacks. Like, that's great for you.
Right.
But some of us are over here desperate, and modern medicine is failing us.
Right.
And so we're going to go do the taboo thing
Right.
in our desperation. And then it makes me wonder how many suicides have been because of panic attacks that this mushroom could have healed, or
Right.
trying to get off the benzos that this mushroom could have fixed or helped, or they never would have had to get on them in the first place, or how much depression that the psilocybins could have relieved. That in 10 years, those people get to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever that number is of suicides, if we could poll them before they had gone,
Right.
and ask them, what are you doing and why are you doing it? I fully believe almost all of it was panic attacks, anxiety, drug withdrawals, depression.
Right.
That very few of it would be some inflammatory one-time incident that they can't live with, so they immediately want to kill themselves. I'm
Right.
sure
Right.
that's part of it. I'm sure they're there. But I would venture to guess the bulk of them were something that these two mushrooms could have very beautifully and easily remedied for those people. So
Right.
all these haters and people that want to be like, if you use drugs, it's not spirituality. Like you can only get there by white knuckling it and practicing your meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's pharmaceuticals for that. All those people are standing in a place of privilege, of not having to suffer a level of mental health that they can't even fathom your own brain and body can do to you.
Right. Right.
So, and in one way, like I'm angry that they want to step over here into my world and try to tell me what I am and am not doing and why. But then part of me is like, good, like,
Right.
great. Turn around, walk in that direction, and go do good things.
Right.
Let do
Mm-hmm.
great.
Teach
So
their
I'm
own.
still dealing with that bullshit of being angry at all the people that have hazed me over it. But
I hear you. I hear you. And look, like you, I personally, I have no taboo to it, right? Because I deal with truth. I just am a truth teller, so I would never hesitate. Look, but at the same time, I can feel the presence of what it is. I mean, even when I had found so much peace and transformation in something like Zen meditation, which to me was like the ultimate antiviral remover. It just removed the virus. But still, my family was Catholic. My grandma didn't want to hear that. Nobody wanted to hear that. It was blasphemy. And I was like, well, I'm not going to feel guilty about
have
it.
you seen the iconography in the church?
Right. But I mean, you get the pressure. But again, this kind of goes back to everyththing I was saying of like, this is how we get lost in the trip of false identity anyway, right? Is everybody's living for everybody else. Everybody has everybody has an expectation of how it's supposed to go. But when you look at society, everybody's just faking it. You know what I mean? Everybody's lost. Like there's nobody, I don't care how well they seem, that truly can tell you what you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to be doing it, what your purpose is, or, those type of things. So, my only hesitation talking about things like this today is that I have a background in clinical psych and I work with people coming off benzos. And so I have to be very careful, one, that I don't lead anyone down a path that could harm them in their state, because we don't know what this exactly would do to them, And so I don't want to be like someone that they go, well, Coach Powers said to go do these things. I'm not saying that. I just want to introduce the narrative and let them kind of explore it for themselves, more or less, right?
I can tell you in the 4 years that I've been doing this, and I mean, when we do what we do, we become Grand Central Station sort of people's anecdotes, information, stories, and all that, thousands and thousands of stories. I don't know a single person that has harmed themselves doing this in their way,
Right.
either with a professional or on their own, figuring out how to get off of their benzo with this mushroom. I don't know of anyone that is harmed with psilocybin. I know that people with bipolar disorder, that they know they have it, suspect they have it, need to be very careful with tryptamines. It almost always triggers a manic episode when
Right.
it's some of the worst in their lives. Because this is a GABA agonist, if you're on sleep medications, Ambien and Lyrica and stuff like that, I wouldn't take those together. there's no deaths on record for the Amanita mushroom, but the few that are there, they had high amounts of alcohol in their system. So I wouldn't mix alcohol with this thing. Anything else that's going to bump your GABA, just be very careful with it when you're trying to work your way through this process. We know that people that have any kind of schizoaffective disorder
Yes.
can have a worsening of symptoms with tryptamines.
Yep.
But this is not a tryptamine right here. And I actually know a couple of schizophrenics that have used it, and it didn't make any of their symptoms worse. It helped their anxiety. If you are on, if you take cannabis, use cannabis in any capacity, you're going to have a really hard time feeling Amanita. That doesn't mean you won't get some of the healing effects, but there's some gating going on in the endocannabinoid system that Amanita also plugs into, and I think it's going to be in the glutamate channels. So if you want to really treat your anxiety, then if you really need to feel this mushroom and really get into this mushroom, you're going to have to get off the cannabis. And a lot of people do. Cannabis, we already know, really does harm your sleep. It reduces the amount of time you spend in theta, which is what you need for healing. It reduces the amount of time that you're REMing and dreaming, which you need. This mushroom does the opposite. We don't have any sleep studies yet. I'm about to do a sleep study. This is the sleep mushroom, and it works on your sleep. And here I am, 5 years later, I sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, and I've never felt this amazing with this much energy during the day. So it seems to make your sleep more efficient.
Right.
So I just wanted to mention these drug interactions and these mental illnesses that we do know for a fact are a problem, so that if any of you have fallen into any of those categories, go do a little more work and get, do more research or whatever. But when I hold ceremony with this mushroom, it's in the paperwork that you've got to get off of the alcohol, the cannabis, Lyrica, sleep medications, all that stuff. When it comes to SN and SRIs, all I know is that people take them together because they can take them with their benzos or whatever, and there doesn't seem to be any interaction. But this is feedback that's anecdotal, that people are talking to me and telling me. All I'm doing is spouting off a bunch of stuff as a YouTuber that I'm getting feedback about, plus what it says on the internet about these mental health issues that can be worsened. And then what I know about the pharmacology of GABA drugs, like, why would you double up on them like that? So don't be stupid. Just be careful and be cautious, and talk to your healthcare people.
Right. Yeah, I've had clients that had great experiences, again, coming off of benzos on the microdose, Amanita particularly. I had a guy that came down from 30 all the way from 30 milligrams and jumped, and he said, Dave, I couldn't have done it without it. Right. So again, I gotta be very careful with my words here, because there's a lot of people look at me and I don't want them to take it the wrong way. I just want to share information here. And like you, I haven't heard anyone have any bad experiences. That said, I also have a bunch of clients now that are taking the Amanita from a place, I think it's in Canada, and they've removed the psychedelic.
Psych wellness.
Is that what it is? Maybe
they didn't remove the psychedelic. All they did was do that conversion. So in its natural state, it has ibotenic acid. It's front loaded with ibotenic acid. And then it's got one little molecule that with heat will pop off and turn it into muscimol. And for the longest time, everybody has said muscimol is the only important drug in there. I disagree. I believe you should have 50-50. The ibotenic acid hits the glutamate and cholinergic channels, which are very important. And then the muscimol gets the GABA receptors, and you need that balance between the two, which is why any kind of synthesized muscimol type drug has been so destructive in the past. Synthesized muscimol is destructive. These benzos are so destructive because that's all they're doing, is they're hitting one receptor type in GABA and just tweaking it all the way out. And it's a highly complex system. I believe this is a highly complex one drug that's fully packaged to be an adaptogen, so that if you make the tea the way that I talk about on my channel on amanitadreamer.net on my website, you get that mixed package, and it's very healing and balancing. But because ibotenic acid was only studied back in the 60s and 70s by injecting it into animal brains and killing brain cells, and that's where it stopped. Everyone's like, ibotenic acid, it'll kill your brain. And yet for 30,000 years, humans have been taking it raw and eating it in its natural form.
Right.
So there's a big disconnect going on there. But for legal reasons, Sight Wellness, a corporation that wanted to get in the mushroom space into Amanita for safety and legal reasons, had to do that full conversion to make it 100% muscimol and no ibo, because of the science that's not there. And that's what most companies are doing, is just offering the muscimol. Their muscimol is coming from the mushroom. Big difference from synthesized muscimol coming from a lab.
Right.
And benzos, right? These are 3 different drugs that are hitting the GABA receptors, but because they're pulling it out of a whole mushroom extract and then doing that conversion, then it's just muscimol that's come out of the mushroom, and it's efficacious and does a really good job at what it does.
Right.
But it will also make you tired and sleepy and dull, and you can take too much and that kind of thing. So it's not that they removed the psychedelic from it. It's that there's not enough in a bottle to trip on.
I got you. Yeah, I've had clients that were sharing it, and I'm surprised to see it's at least several of them were saying, man, this really helped me, really, really helped me. So I was a little, and I didn't realize that you couldn't trip. And I actually, at one point, I was like, I don't think you're taking Amanita. Like, you're taking it, you're not tripping. I'm like, they go, yeah, it's not it's not a psychedelic. I'm like, yeah, it is. So that makes sense. So what do you think about them trying it that way? I mean, they seem to be getting some relief. Does it make sense to you that, or is there a better way that they could be?
No, it will, because I mean, that's what it does. It's hitting those GABA receptors. It's going to stop your panic and your anxiety for sure. But I mean, if you are a soccer mom with some stress and anxiety and you want to control that shit, like, do it. That will work.
Right.
That'll work. But I don't know. I'm so stressed. I have such a lifetime of severe anxiety and panic attacks that I wanted healing.
Right.
And the mushroom it's packaged in a way that, I mean, I interviewed her. Her name is Ava Machacek. This book is Kevin Feeney wrote this really thick about this mushroom. And Ava Machacek's got an entire chapter here on the components of this mushroom. And I interviewed her, but we're up to like 7 actives in this thing, plus 20 to 30 other, entourage effect things in here, from precursors to dopamine to vitamin D. I mean, there's so much packaged in this mushroom. It's very healing. But if you don't trust yourself to identify it, if you don't want to buy it off the internet, I have approved vendors that I trust that you can buy it from. If you're afraid to make it yourself and take it, if you just have to have things packaged by another authority that's tested it, that says, take this, do this, and you're good, then that's what you need to do, because it's better than not doing anything.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. And like I said, they seem to be really getting some relief off of it, but that's why I wanted to ask you about it. Cause I'm like, is there a better way, or is it, are they missing something that could be more helpful in whatever the version that they're doing?
Well, I mean, I take all 3. I use ibotenic acid where I don't convert it at all. That's the limitless drug.
Right.
It puts you in a high gamma flow state where
Right.
you can see all these possibilities of ways to problem solve and simultaneously and work them out and just go. Like, it's literally like limitless.
Right.
And that's without doing any decarbing of it, just breaking off a piece and eating it, or doing like a cold water.
Right.
extraction and drinking it. And then there's like mixing it 50-50, which is really good for the afternoon or the evening, like around 7. And then when you just want to come down, it will give you that little boost of energy to get you through the evening. And then it'll calmly turn into that muscimol for that sleep calming stuff. Then you can do high doses of the tea until it starts to give you like a stomach issue, because ibo can start to irritate your stomach in higher doses. You just find where that is and then add lemon and decarb it a little more. And then you start to get into macro dosing, which can really propel you into healing a lot of deep stuff rapidly.
Right.
And then there's full muscimol microdosing, and then full muscimol trip experiences, which you should never do alone at home. That's so dangerous. You need someone with you that's experienced with it. And that is also levels of healing that are just, we don't even have time to cover here. The experiences and the healing and the things that happen on these macro doses and higher of the tea, and then macro, and trip doses of muscimol. It's a multi-faceted medicine for sure.
Right. Now, what are your thoughts on microdosing? Because looking at the literature, I know with like John Hopkins so far, they're not doing a ton of microdosing yet, I don't think. And I've seen things that are a little bit conflicting, saying, well, microdosing, we don't know if it really helps or not. Anecdotally, from my experience, it seems to be still pretty damn effective. But what are
I've
your
never
thoughts?
suffered from severe depression. So I can't speak to psilocybin microdosing for depression. I did microdose psilocybin, and because I wasn't noticing much from it really, that I couldn't get from Amanita muscaria, like creativity and really cool ideas and really flowing with colors and getting really cool like synergy with it. I could just easily get that from Amanita muscaria. So I didn't really microdose psilocybin. It just kept being underwhelming for me. But
Right.
I think if people are just cannot get out of depression, I hear a lot of positive results from psilocybin with depression.
Right.
But microdosing the tea with Amanita, I've heard nothing but good things.
Really.
Nothing but good things with it, because it immediately will stop the anxiety and bring the panic down, because it's immediately eye-opening and heart-opening and immediately pulls that ego front and center and makes you really full of life and want to live. And then that just gets expanded the higher the doses that you take.
Right.
I've heard nothing but good things about it. But I've heard good things about psilocybin on the depression side.
Right.
This will heal anything that has made you go inward and feel less than as a human and smaller as a human, which in my states of depression is how they felt for me. So this feels like an opposite of depression, life affirming mushroom, but I've never had that debilitating depression. So I don't want to speak to that. I think though that a lot of veterans, a lot of people have that hopeless, sinking, life-ending depression that I think could probably speak to the psilocybin side of it better than I could.
Yeah. So you think maybe the Amanita is a better microdosing for option than generally, if you had to pick one or the other?
Well, it's legal, first of all. That right there just
definitely
makes
plus.
it fantastic.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. Now I also saw that you spoke about lion's mane in your video.
Love lion's mane, man. It healed whatever the medicines did to my nervous system and my peripheral nerves and my brain and the dementia. And I think that I got an autoimmune disorder or something, because, the weight of that, my body, and trying to deal with that medicine was so awful. The weight of the pharmaceuticals, I think it weakened my immune system. But yeah, reishi helped bring my immune system back online. High dosing reishi with cracked spores. The cracked spores are the thing. And lion's mane, man, it is definitely a nootropic neurogenic, regrows the myelin sheath, supposedly. And within 9 months of getting off of the benzos and starting on Amanita, but also lion's mane at the same time, within 9 months, I would say I was probably fully functional without needing notes and help anymore. Felt like I didn't have dementia anymore. At a year and a half, I was above where I was before I even started taking benzos, because of what anxiety had been, the toll it had been taking on my brain. Now it's insane how my brain functions. I sleep 3 or 4 hours and I will wake up with so many ideas that I've gotten good at using my voice recorder on my phone, because I'm recording ideas all the time. I'm writing 3 books. I wrote the documentary. I'm filming a documentary. I'm doing these podcasts and getting my products. I got my products to market, and now I'm having them made professionally. I'm going to start speaking at more conferences, and it's just me. I'm like a one-woman show doing it all myself, because I've got the brain capacity to do it. And I've still got this many. I mean, I've been making videos for 4 years. These are my video ideas that I still haven't made yet. Like, it's insane.
Love it. I love that.
So, and I thought after benzos, I worried, and I say this because I want y'all to know you absolutely can get it back. I don't know that you will, but I know that it's possible. So don't give up. The pain and all that stuff, like I don't, it's all gone now, but I mean, I did the due diligence. I did the work. I changed the water I drink, changed the food I ate. I exercise. I took these mushrooms. It takes work, but I mean, I think we're all used to that.
Right. Yeah, the lion's mane, that was fascinating. I'm actually been turning a lot of clients onto that because of the ability to sort of, like you said, with the myelination, the ability to heal nerves. And I thought, wow, here's my cat. He busted in here.
Oh,
come on! You wanted to be on TV.
Aw, I have 5 of those.
Turd. He busted in here. He kicked the door open. He's been messing with me for about 10 minutes. But excellent. Anyway, God, I could talk to you all night. Maybe you can come back on again sometime. I think this was an awesome introduction.
See if people respond well to it. If they have a lot of questions, I'll come back.
Yeah, it would be great. I love everything you're doing, and I really appreciate you coming on and being so open and sharing everything. And I think you were, like I said, this is a topic that I've been passionate about for a long time, and I've been wanting to be more transparent about it, but I felt like the time needed to be right, and it needed to be the right person to talk about some of these things. And I think you were the right person, and the time certainly was right. So before we go, tell everybody how they can learn more about you and find your resources. You have a YouTube channel. I know I've been watching some of your videos.
That's Amanita Dreamer on YouTube. AmanitaDreamer.net for all my videos. Mushroom Voice is my community if you want to talk to other people dealing with all this stuff too. And Mushroom Voice is where my store is. So that's pretty much me, Amanita Dreamer and Mushroom Voice.
Awesome. And I'll post some links in the description in the comments too, so so they can find you and everything. Well, my friend, it's awesome. I love this conversation. I'm glad to have met you, and to it's always wonderful to meet another kindred spirit, kind of like meeting another alien, right?
I take trips to your part of the world 2 or 3 times a year. So next time I'm headed your way, I'll let you know. We'll get coffee.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I'm right here in Central Florida. So, well, awesome. Cool. All right. Till next time, my friends.